Hi everyone, Kieran here. The video I have for you today is about masks and creating different types of masks from simple to more advanced masks and also combining them together. So our image here is a long exposure shot of a random tree somewhere with some nice streaky lenticular clouds, some smoothed out water and some detail through the mid area here. So let's just say I wanted to add a curves adjustment layer to the image and I wanted to just darken the sky here. Now to do that, if I just darken the whole image here, I could select my layer mask here, which at the moment is white, meaning the effect is going to take place over the entire image, and I can just paint black onto this layer mask with a brush at 100% opacity, 100% flow, and just a soft edge. And if I paint black over the region I don't want it to affect, then that'll take that out. And that's just a simple way of just darkening the sky without darkening the rest of the image. But as you can see, it's darkening the tree there as well. So if I hold down Alt and click on my layer mask that I've drawn, it's not too accurate, but it's got a nice feathered effect through it. But again, it's not affecting, or it's not blocking out this tree. But if I start painting black over there, it's bringing out the lightness of the tree, but it's also making the sky behind it brighter, which just looks like I've painted a mask over it, which is not what you really want to have in your image. You can switch to white and kind of paint that effect back in. You can try and go in between here, but it's not going to look too great. So what else can we do? Well, let's just delete this layer mask. We'll just create a new one, and let's try a gradient. So we'll select our gradient tool over here, and just with it selected as a simple black to white gradient, with white to black or black to white, depending on how you're going to draw it. So we're going white to black here. So we'll say we want the effect to take place from here, the top of the tree, but we don't want it to affect all the way down to here. And that's not too bad. Again, it's affecting a little bit of the top of the tree and some of the foreground. So we can just keep drawing gradients over here, however we want, and it's just going to keep re-evaluating or changing that mask there. Also, if you want to keep your gradient straight, if you hold down Shift while drawing it, doesn't matter if you swing around a bit too much to the left or the right, it'll keep it nice and straight. So just holding down Shift and just drawing gradients until find an area that I like, and that's not too bad. So let's just have a look at our mask here. So white is where the effect is taking place and the black is where it's not. So that, once again, that's not too bad, but it's not too different from when we just haphazardly drew out a mask. So what else can we do? Let's just delete that, and we'll go to our wand tool, or our quick selection tool, or pressing W, and let's just start drawing over the sky, and draw from left to right. And it's made a selection of pretty much just the sky here, although it has selected the top of the tree, and that's an area that we don't want to be part of our mask or part of our selection in this case. So let's just zoom in. So around this area where there's a nice transition between sky and mountain, it's done a good job at selecting that path along there, but this tree, it's done a rotten job, and around this snow-capped mountain as well. So if I hold down Alt, I can switch that from adding to the selection to taking it away from the selection. So I'm just going to take away some of this snow-capped mountain, And let's see how it goes taking away some of this tree. But if I go too far, it's going to start taking away some of that sky, which I want to add. And this is a pretty blunt and sharp transition between where I want it to take effect and where I don't. So we're going to go to our refine edge menu here. So in red is where the selection isn't, and it's clear where we do have our selection. And we've got a little brush tool here where we can just paint along this edge just with a small brush and tell Photoshop that it needs to take a closer look at this region and do a better job at making a selection along there. Now along this tree, it's kind of difficult to paint around all the areas that we want to change the selection here. So let's just see how we go with a nice big brush and just scribble all over that tree. Not going too much into the mountain, but scribble all over that. And look at that. Photoshop's done a fantastic job at taking out all the tree but leaving in these areas of sky. So I'm pretty happy with that, and that wasn't too hard to do. Now I'll just go back to a smaller brush and draw along the rest of the mountain. The reason I'm keeping it a smaller brush is sometimes where there is a bit of a lighter area in your foreground, if you go for a too big of a brush, it'll start to include some of that area there and try and make a feathered transition between the two. So I just want to keep it to this very sharp edge here. And just draw that along the whole area. Again, you don't have to be too accurate, don't need to go down to the pixel level. Just need to pretty much say in that area, make a better selection. So that's not too bad. Let's click OK. And now we've got our selection made of the sky without the tree. And any selection that we make, and then if we click on an adjustment layer, it's going to automatically make a layer mask out of that selection. So if we have a look here, it's done a pretty good job at blocking out that tree, the branches, some of the brighter areas of the leaves, and kind of feathered out some of the areas where it's been a bit blurry from the long exposure, which is actually an effect that we want, because if it's just too straight, it's going to look a bit unnatural, but if it's feathered between the two, then it's going to look kind of alright. And if we have a look at our snow-capped mountains here, there's a bit of inaccuracies along here where I've drawn along it, but try out the adjustments, and if it's not really making that much of a difference, it's not going to be worth the effort to change. You can fix it up by going through all these areas, painting out all this white, painting these little grey areas white again, but that's just going to take time, and for this video we'll just assume that it's not going to make too much of a difference. If I start darkening that sky, you'll see that unless I go really far, it's not going to make that much of a difference anyway. So let's have a look at how this is looking now. So if I darken that sky down, it's not affecting the brightness of that tree, which is just what I wanted. But if I go too far, then even when the mask has made a good selection, it's starting to look a bit unnatural between the mountains and the sky. So what we want to do is maybe add another layer mask to that area without affecting this nice selection that we've got here, and just to try and make that a bit more of a smoother transition. So the way I'm going to do that is by creating a group and throwing this adjustment layer into that group and make a mask that is going to affect any adjustments made or any adjustment layer in this group. And we'll try our gradient again and just try and make a nice transition. Going the wrong way there. Nice transition from white to black. So you can see it's not changing our tree there, but it's just adding a slightly more feathered effect to our mountains here. So let's just make that a bit more. And that's not too bad. And I can always go back into my adjustment and maybe make that sky not so dark. And so now I've got two adjustment layers, masks that are affecting this adjustment layer. So I've got this mask here and this mask here. So anytime you've got a group with extra masks in that group, it is going to create a mask that is the intersection of those two layer masks. So if we want to visualize this, we can create a selection from our layer mask by holding down Control and clicking on it. So that brings up our selection of the sky again. And if you hold down Control, Alt, and Shift, it'll give us this little X on our cursor, which means the intersection of those two selections. So it's selecting all the white pixels that are common to both of these masks. And I'll just create another adjustment layer just so you can see the mask from those two. So this is technically the mask that is affecting our adjustment layer, where it has this gradient through here, but our well-defined selection as well. So it's no longer just that selection, and it's no longer just that gradient, it's a combination of the two. So if we just delete this redundant adjustment layer, so you can see now we've got that nice smooth transition where it doesn't look as unnatural between the sky and the mountains, and it's still not affecting our tree up through here. And you can see down at this area where it was a bit not as accurate there, even that adjustment layer isn't creating any problems down here. So we didn't need to worry about it. Now, if you want to see how to create even more advanced adjustment layers, you can check out my previous video where I go into adjustment layers for just affecting the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. And you can combine those with these adjustment layers by adding a new group and having groups within groups and adding adjustment layers to those as well. And then you can combine multiple layer masks to affect your adjustments to make them super accurate. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.